The stage lurched to a violent halt, just as night swallowed the last rays of winter sun. And Lucas Northwood knew, before he even looked up from his coffee, that something unusual was about to change the ordinary rhythm of his existence. Snow had been falling for 3 hours straight, coating Wilson, Kansas in a thick blanket of white that transformed the dusty cattle town into something almost magical. Lucas stood on the porch of his small ranch house 2 miles outside town, watching the flakes drift down like pieces of torn paper from heaven. At 28 years old, he had lived alone for the past 4 years, ever since his father passed and his mother moved back east to live with her sister. The ranch was modest, just enough cattle to keep him fed and clothed, and a few horses he trained and sold when he could. It was a lonely life, but Lucas had convinced himself he preferred it that way. People were complicated. Animals were honest. He was about to head inside when he heard the distant sound of horses struggling through snow, accompanied by shouts that carried on the wind. Lucas grabbed his coat and hat, then saddled his horse with quick, practiced movements. Something was wrong. Nobody traveled in weather like this unless they had no choice. The wind bit at his face as he rode toward town, following the sounds. About a mile from his ranch, he found the stage completely stuck in a snowdrift, tilted at a dangerous angle. The driver was trying to calm 4 panicked horses while a guard stood helplessly beside the coach, looking at the wheels that had sunk deep into the snow. "Need help," Lucas called out, already dismounting. The driver, a grizzled man named Pete whom Lucas recognized from town, looked relieved. "Lucas Northwood, thank the Lord. We got passengers inside and this damn coach ain't moving nowhere. Town's still 2 miles off and this storm's only getting worse." "How many passengers?" "Just one. A lady. Been traveling alone from St. Louis." Lucas felt his eyebrows rise. A woman traveling alone was unusual enough. Doing it in winter was practically unheard of. He moved to the coach door and pulled it open, steadying himself against the tilted frame. Inside, pressed against the far corner with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, sat the most striking woman Lucas had ever seen. She had auburn hair that had come partially loose from its pins, falling in waves around a face with high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Those eyes met his with a mixture of fear and defiance that struck something deep in his chest. "Madam, I'm Lucas Northwood. My ranch is just a mile back. This coach is not going anywhere tonight, and if you stay out here, you will freeze. Will you let me take you somewhere safe?" She studied him for a long moment, and Lucas found himself holding his breath. Up close, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, probably only 24 or 25. She wore a dark blue traveling dress that had clearly been expensive once, though now it was rumpled and dusty from days of travel. "How do I know I can trust you?" Her voice was softer than he expected, with a slight tremor that suggested she was already cold. "You don't," Lucas said honestly. "But your choices right now are to trust me or freeze to death in this coach. Pete here can vouch for me. I am not a perfect man, but I would never harm a woman." Pete leaned down to peer into the coach. "He is telling the truth, miss. Lucas is one of the good ones. Keeps to himself mostly, but he is honest." The woman looked between them, then slowly nodded. "My trunk. I will come back for it tomorrow when the storm clears," Lucas promised. "Right now we need to move." He helped her out of the coach, and the moment her feet hit the snow, she stumbled. Lucas caught her, feeling how thin she was beneath the layers of clothing, feeling the tremors running through her body. Without asking permission, he lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. "Hold on to me," he said, and after a moment's hesitation, her hands gripped his coat. The ride back to his ranch was slow and treacherous. The wind had picked up, driving snow into their faces and making visibility nearly impossible. Lucas guided his horse by instinct and memory, keeping one arm around the woman to make sure she did not fall. He could feel her shivering against him, and he urged the horse faster, worried about how cold she must be. When they finally reached his ranch house, Lucas practically carried her inside. The fire in the hearth had burned down to coals, and he quickly built it back up while she stood dripping melted snow onto his floor, looking around with wide eyes. His house was simple but clean. One large room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room, with a bedroom off to one side and a small bathing room his father had added years ago. Everything was plain and functional, built for a solitary man's needs. "Sit by the fire," Lucas said, pulling the one comfortable chair closer to the hearth. "I need to see to my horse, but I will be right back. Do not move from that spot." He did not wait for her response, just headed back out into the storm. His horse needed to be rubbed down and fed after that journey, and Lucas used the time in the barn to steady his own racing heart. He had been alone for so long that having someone else in his house felt strange and disorienting. And not just someone, but a beautiful woman who had looked at him with those stormy eyes and made him feel things he had forgotten he could feel. When he returned to the house 15 minutes later, he found her exactly where he had left her, still wrapped in her damp blanket, staring into the flames. She looked up when he entered, snowflakes melting in her hair. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me." "I know it was not your obligation." Lucas shrugged out of his coat and hung it by the door. "Could not leave you out there. Let me get you some dry clothes. They will be too big, but they will be warm." He returned with one of his flannel shirts and a pair of wool pants, along with thick socks. She took them with a small, grateful smile. "The bedroom is through that door. There is a pitcher of water and a basin. Take your time." When she disappeared into the bedroom, Lucas set about making coffee and heating up the stew he had made the day before. His hands were not quite steady as he worked. He told himself it was just the cold, just the surprise of unexpected company, but he knew it was more than that. Something about her had gotten under his skin in the space of minutes, and that terrified him more than he wanted to admit. She emerged 20 minutes later wearing his clothes, which hung on her small frame like a child playing dress-up. She had taken down her hair and attempted to dry it, and it now fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Without the formal traveling clothes, she looked younger and more vulnerable, and Lucas had to force himself to look away. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the small table. "You need to eat something hot." She obeyed, settling into the chair with visible relief. He placed a bowl of stew in front of her and poured coffee, then sat down across from her with his own bowl. For several minutes they ate in silence, and Lucas tried not to stare at the way the firelight played across her face. "My name is Katherine Lewis," she said finally, setting down her spoon. "Kate. Most people call me Kate, Lucas Northwood, though I guess you already know that." He paused, then asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "What brings a woman alone from St. Louis to Wilson, Kansas in the middle of winter?" Her expression shuddered, and for a moment he thought she would not answer. Then she sighed, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. "I am running away," she said simply. "Or maybe running towards something. I have not quite decided which." Lucas waited, sensing there was more. "I was engaged to be married," Kate continued, her voice flat. "To a man my father chose, Richard Crawford. He owns half the warehouses along the Mississippi and my father owns the other half. It was supposed to be an advantageous match, a merger of families and fortunes. Supposed to be. I found out 2 months before the wedding that Richard had a mistress, had been keeping her for years. When I confronted him, he laughed, said all men of means kept mistresses, and I should not be so naive as to expect differently. Her jaw tightened. He told me I should be grateful he was still willing to marry me, since I was already 24 and practically on the shelf. Lucas felt anger kindle in his chest. So you left. I left. I took the money my grandmother had left me, the money my father could not touch, and I bought a ticket west. I have a cousin in Denver who wrote me once saying I would always have a place with her if I needed it. So that is where I was heading. But the stage stopped here, and then the storm came, and now here I am, sitting in a stranger's house wearing his clothes and telling him my life story. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You must think I am insane. I think you are brave, Lucas said, and meant it. Most people would not have the courage to walk away from that kind of life. Security, comfort, all that money. What good is security if you are miserable? What good is comfort if you are trapped? Kate met his eyes, and the intensity in her gaze made his breath catch. I would rather be poor and free than rich and caged. You might not say that after a Kansas winter, Lucas said, trying to lighten the mood. To his relief, she smiled. It transformed her face, chasing away the shadows and revealing a warmth that made his heart skip. I suppose I will find out. How long do these storms usually last? Could be a day, could be 3. Hard to say. The roads will not be passable for at least that long anyway. He hesitated, then added, You are welcome to stay here until you can continue your journey. I know it is not proper, but there is nowhere else, and I promise you will be safe. Where will you sleep? I will make a pallet by the fire. You take the bed. Kate started to protest, but he held up a hand. I will not argue about this. You have been through enough without sleeping on the floor. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Thank you, Lucas, for everything. I do not know what I would have done if you had not found us. Good thing you did not have to find out. They finished their meal in companionable silence, and Lucas found himself sneaking glances at her when he thought she was not looking. There was something about Kate that drew him in, something beyond her obvious beauty. Maybe it was the strength he sensed beneath her exhaustion, or the way she had chosen freedom over security. Or maybe it was simply that, for the first time in 4 years, his house did not feel empty. That night, Lucas lay on his pallet by the fire, listening to the wind howl outside and the soft sounds of Kate moving around in his bedroom. He stared at the ceiling, knowing sleep would be a long time coming. His life had been so carefully ordered, so deliberately solitary. He had convinced himself he did not need anyone, that alone was safer than risking his heart again. But in the space of a few hours, Kate Lewis had shaken that conviction. Just her presence in his house had awakened something he thought he had buried long ago. Hope. Longing. The dangerous idea that maybe, just maybe, he did not have to be alone forever. In the bedroom, Kate lay in Lucas's bed, surrounded by the scent of him on the sheets and pillow. Leather and wood smoke and something indefinably male that made her feel safer than she had in months. She thought about the way he had looked at her over dinner, with a combination of curiosity and respect that Richard had never shown her. Lucas had kind eyes, she thought. Honest eyes. The kind of eyes that did not hide cruelty or disdain. She had no idea what would happen when the storm cleared. Would she continue to Denver? Could she? Her money would only stretch so far, and winter travel was expensive and dangerous. But staying here was impossible. Lucas had been kind to help her, but she could not impose on him indefinitely. Still, as she drifted toward sleep, Kate found herself hoping the storm would last just a little longer. Just long enough to rest. Just long enough to feel safe. Just long enough to figure out what she really wanted from this new life she was trying to build. The storm did not let up the next day. If anything, it intensified, piling snow against the windows and making it impossible to see more than a few feet beyond the porch. Lucas woke early, as he always did, and found Kate already awake, sitting by the fire with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Morning," he said, moving to stoke the fire. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. "Your bed is very comfortable." "Good." He started making coffee, falling into his morning routine. "I need to check on the animals. There is bread and some preserves if you are hungry. Help yourself to anything you need." Kate watched him prepare to go out into the storm, bundling up in multiple layers. "Do you do this every day, no matter the weather?" "Animals do not care about the weather. They still need to be fed and watered." He pulled on his gloves. "I should not be more than an hour. Stay inside where it is warm." She wanted to argue, to say she could help, but she knew she would only be in the way. So she nodded and watched him disappear into the white wall of falling snow beyond the door. While he was gone, Kate explored the house more thoroughly. It was spare but well-maintained, with everything in its place. She found books on a shelf near the fireplace, mostly practical volumes about ranching and horse training, but also a worn copy of Shakespeare's plays and a collection of Robert Burns' poetry. That surprised her. She had not expected a cowboy to read poetry. When Lucas returned, stamping snow off his boots, he found her reading Burns curled up in his chair by the fire. "I hope you do not mind," she said, holding up the book. "I was curious." "Mind? No, I am just surprised. Most people do not expect men like me to read." "Men like you, cowboys. Ranchers, people who work with their hands." He poured himself coffee and leaned against the table. "Most folks think we are too simple for books." "I am learning not to assume anything about you, Lucas Northwood," Kate said softly. Something in her tone made his pulse quicken. He cleared his throat. "The animals are all fine. Storm is still going strong. Looks like we are stuck here for at least another day." "I am sorry to be such an imposition." "You are not." He said it more forcefully than he intended, and she looked up in surprise. "I mean, it is nice having company. Gets lonely out here sometimes." "Do you not have friends in town?" "Family?" Lucas shook his head. "My mother moved back east after my father died. I have some acquaintances in Wilson, but not what you would call friends. Mostly I keep to myself." "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. Lucas found himself telling her things he had not spoken of in years, about his father's death, sudden and shocking from a heart attack at just 52. About his mother's grief that had been so overwhelming she could not bear to stay in Kansas anymore. About the woman he had courted once, who had left him for a banker's son with better prospects. "I guess I decided it was easier to not let people in," he finished. "Animals do not leave. They do not judge. They are just there, honest and simple." Kate set down the book and looked at him with those storm-gray eyes. "But that is not really living, is it? Just existing." Her words hit him like a physical blow because they were true. For 4 years he had been existing, not living. Going through the motions of each day without really feeling anything. It had seemed like the safe choice, the smart choice. But hearing Kate say it out loud made him realize how much he had given up in the name of protecting himself. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "You had everything. Why give it up for uncertainty?" "Because uncertainty is better than knowing exactly what your life will look like for the next 50 years and hating every moment of it," Kate said. "My life in St. Louis was already decided. I would marry Richard. I would host parties and smile at his business associates and look the other way when he visited his mistress. I would have children who would be raised by nannies while I organized charity events and pretended to be happy. And one day I would be old and realize I had never really lived at all. So you chose this instead." "I chose possibility. I chose hope. Even if it means I might fail, at least I will have tried." She stood up, moving closer to him. Do you not ever want more than this, Lucas? More than just surviving?" He looked down at her, at the firelight caught in her hair and the earnest intensity in her expression, and felt something crack open inside his chest. "I did not," he said honestly. "Until yesterday." The air between them suddenly felt charged, electric. Kate's breath caught and Lucas reached out almost without thinking, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek and she leaned into the touch. "Kate," he began, but she shook her head. "Do not say anything you do not mean. Do not make promises you cannot keep. I have had enough of those to last a lifetime. I was just going to say you are the bravest person I have ever met." She smiled then, soft and genuine, and Lucas thought his heart might burst. They stood there for a long moment, not quite touching but not pulling away either, and Lucas felt the careful walls he had built around himself beginning to crumble. The rest of the day passed in a kind of quiet domesticity that Lucas had never experienced before. Kate insisted on helping him prepare lunch, and they worked together in the small kitchen, moving around each other with surprising ease. She told him stories about growing up in St. Louis, about the parties and the expectations and the suffocating weight of being a daughter in a wealthy family. He told her about the ranch, about the horses he trained, about the satisfaction of working land that had belonged to his family for 2 generations. "You ever want to sell it?" Kate asked as they ate. "Move somewhere with more opportunities?" Lucas shook his head. "This is home. It is in my blood. My father built this place up from nothing, and I owe it to him to keep it going. That is a lot of pressure to carry alone. I manage. But what if you did not have to? What if you had help?" Lucas looked at her sharply, but Kate seemed focused on her food, not meeting his eyes. He wondered what she was really asking, but he did not push. It was too soon for questions like that. She was just passing through, he reminded himself. Once the storm cleared, she would continue on to Denver, and he would go back to his solitary life. But the thought filled him with an ache he had not expected. That afternoon, Kate found a deck of cards in a drawer and taught Lucas a game her grandmother had taught her. They played for hours, laughing and talking, and Lucas could not remember the last time he had felt so at ease with another person. Kate was quick-witted and funny, with a sharp intelligence that kept him on his toes. She challenged him, questioned him, made him think about things he had never considered. As evening fell and they prepared dinner together, Lucas realized with a jolt that he did not want this to end. He did not want Kate to leave. The thought of going back to eating alone, sleeping alone, living alone suddenly seemed unbearable. But what could he offer her? He was just a rancher with a modest spread and no real prospects. She came from wealth and sophistication. Even if she was running from that life, would she really want to stay here in the middle of nowhere with him? "You are thinking very loudly," Kate said, and he looked up to find her watching him with an amused expression. "Sorry, just distracted." "By what?" Lucas hesitated, then decided to be honest. "By you. By the fact that in 2 days you have turned my entire life upside down." Kate's amusement faded, replaced by something more serious. "Is that a bad thing?" "I do not know yet," he admitted. "Ask me when the storm clears." That night, they sat by the fire long after dinner was done, talking about everything and nothing. Kate told him about her dreams of seeing the mountains, of learning to ride a horse properly, of maybe opening a small shop someday selling the dresses she loved to sew. Lucas told her about his hopes of expanding the ranch, of breeding horses that would be known across Kansas, of maybe not being alone forever. "Why did she leave?" Kate asked suddenly. "The woman you courted." Lucas stared into the fire. "Mary, her name was Mary. We had been courting for about 6 months, and I thought she cared for me. But when William Turner, the banker's son, started paying attention to her, she dropped me without a second thought." Said she liked me well enough, but liking someone was not reason enough to choose a hard life when she could have an easy one. She was a fool, Kate said fiercely. Any woman would be lucky to have someone like you. You do not know me well enough to say that. I know enough. I know you rode out into a storm to help strangers. I know you gave up your bed without being asked. I know you read poetry and care for animals and have kind eyes that do not lie. She turned to face him fully. I know that in 2 days you have shown me more genuine kindness than Richard did in 2 years of courtship. Lucas felt heat rise in his face. Kate, I am not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I am saying it because it is true. Because you should know that you are worth more than Mary thought. You deserve someone who sees your value. And what about you? Lucas asked quietly. What do you deserve? I am still figuring that out, Kate said with a small smile, but I am starting to think maybe I deserve a choice. The freedom to choose my own path, even if it is difficult, especially if it is difficult. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, and then Kate stood, stretching. I should let you get some rest. Thank you for another day of sanctuary. Kate, wait. Lucas stood as well, his heart pounding. I know we have only known each other for 2 days. I know you are on your way to Denver and you have your own plans. But I need you to know that having you here has meant more to me than I can properly express. You have reminded me what it feels like to not be alone, to have someone to talk to share meals with, to just be with. And I am grateful for that, even if it only lasts a few days. Kate stepped closer, looking up at him. Who says it has to end in a few days? Your cousin in Denver can wait, or maybe I do not need to go to Denver at all. Her voice was soft but steady. Maybe what I was really running toward was not a place but a person. Maybe I just had to travel 1,000 miles to find him. Lucas's breath caught. You cannot mean that. You barely know me. I know enough, she repeated. I know how I feel when I am with you. Safe. Seen. Like I matter for who I am, not what my name is or how much money my father has. Is that not enough to build something on? Kate, I live on a ranch in the middle of Kansas. It is hard work and long days. It is lonely and sometimes brutal. It is nothing like the life you are used to. Good, she said firmly. Because the life I am used to was killing me slowly. I would rather face hard work and honest struggle than another day of suffocating comfort and empty promises. Lucas searched her face, looking for doubt or hesitation, but found only certainty. If you stay, there are no guarantees. I cannot promise you wealth or status or even that things will work out. All I can promise is that I will try every day to be worthy of your choice. That is more than anyone else has ever offered me, Kate said, and then she kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when Lucas responded, pulling her closer, it deepened into something more certain. Something that felt like promise and hope, and the beginning of something neither of them had quite expected to find. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. Are you sure about this? About me? As sure as I have ever been about anything, Kate whispered. Are you sure about me? From the moment I opened that coach door and saw you, my whole world shifted, Lucas said. I just did not know it until now. They stood there in the firelight, holding each other, and outside the storm continued to rage. But inside Lucas's small ranch house, 2 lonely people had found something neither of them had been looking for, but both of them desperately needed. The storm finally broke on the 3rd day, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Lucas woke to bright sunshine streaming through the windows and Kate already up, standing on the porch looking out at the white landscape. It is beautiful, she said when he joined her. I have never seen so much snow. Wait until you have to shovel it, Lucas said with a smile. Then it loses some of its charm. They spent the morning digging out, making paths to the barn and clearing the porch. Kate proved surprisingly willing to work, bundling up in spare clothes of his and attacking the snow with determination. By noon they were both exhausted and covered in snow, but the essential paths were clear. "I need to go into town," Lucas said over lunch. "Check on Pete and the stage, get your trunk, and let people know you are all right. Word has probably spread that there was a passenger and they will be worried." "I will come with you," Kate said immediately. "Kate, people will talk. A woman staying at my ranch. Let them talk." "I am not ashamed, and you should not be either." She met his eyes steadily. "Besides, if I am going to stay here, I might as well meet the town now." Lucas felt a warmth spread through his chest at her casual assumption that she was staying. "All right, but prepare yourself. Wilson is small, and everyone knows everyone's business." The ride into town was slow due to the snow, but beautiful in the bright sunshine. Kate sat in front of Lucas on his horse, and he kept one arm around her waist. She pointed out birds and asked questions about the land, and Lucas found himself seeing his familiar world through new eyes. Wilson, Kansas, was a typical cattle town, one main street with a dozen businesses and 100 or so residents. When Lucas and Kate rode in, they immediately drew attention. Lucas helped Kate down from the horse in front of the general store and felt a dozen pairs of eyes watching them. "Lucas Northwood," called a woman's voice. Mrs. Patterson, the storekeeper's wife, hurried over. "Pete told us you took the stage passenger home with you during the storm." "We were worried sick. Is this the young lady?" "Yes, madam. This is Miss Katherine Lewis. Kate, this is Mrs. Patterson." Kate offered her hand with a warm smile. "Pleased to meet you. Mr. Northwood was kind enough to give me shelter during the storm." Mrs. Patterson looked between them shrewdly but smiled. "Well, you could not have found a better man. Lucas is one of our most upstanding citizens. Come inside, dear, you must be frozen. I will make tea." Before Lucas could protest, Kate was being swept into the store by Mrs. Patterson and two other women who had appeared from nowhere. He watched them go with a mixture of amusement and concern. The women of Wilson were notorious gossips, and by evening the whole town would know Kate had stayed at his ranch. "That your woman?" a male voice asked, and Lucas turned to find Sheriff Tom Brennan watching him with an amused expression. "It is complicated," Lucas said. "Most things involving women are." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "She seems nice. Pretty too. Where is she headed?" "She was going to Denver." "Now I am hoping she is not going anywhere at all." Tom's eyebrows rose. "Fast work. You have known her, what, 3 days? Sometimes that is all it takes to know." "Cannot argue with that. I knew my Martha was the one after 2 days." Tom tilted his hat back. "Well, if you need anything, you let me know. And Lucas, do not let her get away. You have been alone too long." Lucas found Kate half an hour later surrounded by women, drinking tea and laughing at something Mrs. Patterson had said. She looked up when he entered, and her whole face brightened in a way that made his heart skip. "Lucas, Mrs. Patterson was just telling me about the church social next month. She says everyone in town comes." "That is true," Lucas said cautiously, wondering where this was going. "We would love to have you both attend," Mrs. Patterson said. "That is, if Miss Lewis is still in town by then." All eyes turned to Kate, and Lucas held his breath. "I hope to be," Kate said calmly. "I am thinking of staying in Wilson. It seems like a nice town." The women exchanged glances, and Lucas could practically see them calculating. A single woman and a bachelor rancher. The implications were obvious. "Well," Mrs. Patterson said with satisfaction, "that is wonderful news. We could use more young people in Wilson." And Lucas certainly could use some company out on that ranch. They left the store 20 minutes later with Kate's trunk secured to the back of Lucas's horse and the well wishes of half the town following them. As they rode out, Kate laughed. I think Mrs. Patterson is planning our wedding already. Does that bother you? Lucas asked carefully. No, does it bother you? No, Lucas said and realized he meant it. The idea of marrying Kate, of making her his wife permanently, did not scare him the way he thought it would. Instead, it felt right. Natural, like something that was supposed to happen. They were quiet on the ride back to the ranch, but it was a comfortable silence. When they arrived, Lucas helped Kate carry her trunk inside, and she immediately opened it, pulling out her belongings. Dresses and undergarments and shoes, along with a small box of jewelry and a stack of letters tied with ribbon. Everything I own in the world, she said, looking at the scattered contents. It is not much. It is enough, Lucas said. You are enough. That evening they cooked dinner together again, and Lucas realized this was what he had been missing all these years. Not just companionship, but partnership. Someone to share the daily tasks with, to talk to about ordinary things, to simply exist alongside. Kate fit into his life as if there had always been a space waiting for her. After dinner, as they cleaned up, Kate said, I need to write to my cousin in Denver. Let her know I am not coming. And your family in St. Louis, Kate's expression hardened. My father will have disowned me by now. He gave me an ultimatum when I broke the engagement. Marry Richard or be cut off completely, so I am already dead to him. I am sorry. I am not. He made his choice and I made mine. She dried the last dish and set it aside. My mother is a different story. She did not approve of my leaving, but she understood. She has been trapped in that world her whole life. I think part of her wished she had been brave enough to do what I did. Will you write to her, eventually, when I know what I am doing with my life? Kate turned to face him. Speaking of which, we need to talk about practical matters. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. Such as I cannot live here indefinitely without contributing. It would not be proper, and more importantly, it would not be fair to you. She held up a hand when he started to protest. I have some money from my grandmother. Not a fortune, but enough to pay room and board for a while. And I can work. I am good with numbers, and Mrs. Patterson mentioned she could use help at the store. I am a skilled seamstress too. There must be people in town who need dresses made or clothes mended. Kate, you do not have to. Yes, I do. I left St. Louis because I wanted to make my own way in the world. That means supporting myself, not relying on another man to take care of me. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I want to be your partner, Lucas, not your burden. Lucas looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, and fell a little more in love. All right, but I do not want your money for room and board. This is your home now for as long as you want it to be. Then let me help with the ranch work. Teach me to care for the horses, to mend fences, whatever needs doing. I want to learn. That is hard work, Kate, physical labor like you have never done. Good, I want to be useful, I want to earn my place here. She stepped closer. And I want to be someone you can rely on, not just someone you have to protect and provide for. Lucas cupped her face in his hands. You are already someone I rely on. You have given me hope again, Kate. Purpose. You have reminded me what it means to not just survive, but to actually live. That is worth more than any amount of ranch work. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and Lucas felt the last of his reservations melt away. Whatever happened, however things worked out, he knew with complete certainty that Kate Lewis was meant to be in his life. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine that felt both new and ancient. Kate proved to be a quick learner, throwing herself into ranch work with determination despite her initial clumsiness. Lucas taught her to care for the horses, to recognize signs of illness in cattle, to mend tack and fix fences. She complained good-naturedly about sore muscles and calloused hands, but she never quit. In return, Kate brought life and warmth to the ranch house. She cooked meals that were more elaborate than Lucas's simple fare, brought color and comfort through small touches like curtains and tablecloths, filled the silence with laughter and conversation. The house that had been just a place to sleep became a home. They also spent hours talking, learning each other's histories and dreams. Lucas told Kate about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could walk, about his father's quiet pride and his mother's gentle strength. Kate told him about growing up in a mansion that felt like a prison, about the expectations that had weighed on her since birth, about the small rebellions that had kept her sane. "Did you ever love him?" Lucas asked one night as they sat by the fire. "Richard?" Kate considered the question. "No. I tried to convince myself I could learn to love him, but I was lying to myself. There was nothing there to love. He was charming when he wanted something, cruel when he did not get his way, and indifferent the rest of the time." She looked at Lucas. "I did not know what love was supposed to feel like until I met you. And what does it feel like? Like coming home. Like being seen for who I really am and being valued because of it, not in spite of it." She moved closer. "Like I would rather face any hardship with you than live in luxury without you." Lucas kissed her then, deep and passionate, and they stayed by the fire until the flames burned low, wrapped in each other's arms. As winter slowly gave way to early spring, Kate became part of the community. She worked 2 days a week at Mrs. Patterson's store and took on sewing commissions from several townswomen. She attended church services with Lucas, where they sat together and endured the speculative looks from the congregation. She helped organize a school fundraiser and won over even the most skeptical residents with her genuine warmth and willingness to work. But there was one problem that neither of them could ignore forever. They were living together, unmarried, in a small town where such things were not easily overlooked. People were understanding about the circumstances of Kate's arrival, but as weeks turned into months, whispers began. "They are talking," Kate said one evening in late April. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, and her voice was troubled. "About us living together. Mrs. Patterson tried to warn me gently today, but I could hear what she was really saying." "I know," Lucas said quietly. "Tom mentioned it to me last week. What do we do?" Lucas turned to look at her, at this woman who had transformed his life in ways he was still discovering. "We could get married." Kate's eyes widened. "Lucas, I know it is not romantic. I know I should have done this properly, with flowers and a ring and a planned proposal. But Kate, I love you. I have loved you since that first night when you looked at me with those storm-gray eyes and chose to trust me. I want you to be my wife, not because of what people say, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "You love me," Kate whispered. "So much it terrifies me sometimes. You are everything I did not know I needed, everything I gave up hoping I could have." He took her hands. "I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build a family with you, grow old with you, face whatever comes with you by my side. Kate Lewis, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Kate's face, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes. I love you too, Lucas. I think I have loved you since you opened that coach door and offered me safety when I had nowhere else to go." Lucas pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and hope and joy that was overflowing in his heart. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing through tears, Kate said, "We should probably tell people." "Tomorrow," Lucas said. "Tonight, let us just be happy." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Wilson. It was a simple ceremony with half the town in attendance and Mrs. Patterson crying happy tears in the front row. Kate wore a cream-colored dress she had sewn herself, simple but elegant, and carried wildflowers Lucas had picked that morning. Lucas wore his best suit, nervous and proud and so full of love he thought he might burst. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed Kate in front of God and everyone, and the congregation erupted in applause. Afterwards, there was a reception at the church hall with food and music and dancing. Lucas, who had always been quiet and reserved, found himself laughing and celebrating alongside his neighbors, Kate's hand firmly in his. "You look happy," Sheriff Brennan said, clapping Lucas on the back. "Really happy." "I am," Lucas said, watching Kate dance with Mr. Patterson. "She is the best thing that ever happened to me." "Hold on to her then. Women like that do not come along often. I intend to hold on to her for the rest of my life." That night, after all the guests had gone home and they returned to the ranch, Lucas carried Kate over the threshold even though she had lived there for months. She laughed and held on to him, and when he set her down, she looked around the house with new eyes. "It is official now," she said softly. "This is really our home." "It has been your home since that first night," Lucas said. "This just makes it legal." They made love for the first time as husband and wife, tender and passionate and full of promise. Afterwards, lying in bed with Kate curled against his side, Lucas stared at the ceiling and marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few months. "What are you thinking about?" Kate asked sleepily. "About how lucky I am. About how a snowstorm brought me everything I did not know I was missing." Kate tilted her head up to kiss his jaw. "I am the lucky one. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You gave me love when I did not think I deserved it. You gave me a future when all I could see was escape from my past." "We gave each other those things," Lucas corrected. "That is what partnership means." As spring turned to summer, Lucas and Kate settled into married life. They worked the ranch together, Kate proving to be a natural with horses. She helped Lucas train a particularly stubborn mare that no one else could manage, using patience and gentleness where others had tried force. When the mare finally accepted a saddle, Lucas kissed Kate in front of the barn and told her she was magic. "Not magic," Kate said, laughing. "Just stubborn myself. I understand difficult females." They made improvements to the house, adding a second bedroom that Kate said was for guests but Lucas suspected was for future children. They bought more cattle with the money Kate earned from her sewing, expanding the herd. They attended town functions together, hosted dinners for neighbors, became known as one of Wilson's solid couples. In August, Kate missed her monthly courses. She did not say anything at first, afraid to hope, but when it happened again in September, she made an appointment with the town doctor. When he confirmed what she suspected, Kate rode back to the ranch barely able to contain her excitement. She found Lucas in the barn, working with one of the young horses. "Lucas," she called, and something in her voice made him turn immediately, concern on his face. "What is wrong?" "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. Lucas, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment Lucas just stared at her, the words not quite registering. Then his face broke into the widest smile Kate had ever seen. He whooped with joy and picked her up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back on her feet. "A baby. We are having a baby." He cupped her face in his hands. "Are you happy?" "So happy I could burst," Kate said, tears streaming down her face. "Are you?" "Kate, you have given me everything. A home, a wife, purpose, hope, and now a child. I am the happiest man alive." They told the town the following Sunday after church and were inundated with congratulations and advice. Mrs. Patterson immediately appointed herself Kate's guardian, insisting she not work too hard and offering endless recommendations for everything from morning sickness to nursery arrangements. As Kate's belly grew through the fall and winter, Lucas became almost comically protective. He insisted on doing all the heavy work, barely let her lift anything, and worried constantly about her health. Kate found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "Lucas, I am pregnant, not dying," she said one snowy evening in January as he hovered while she climbed the porch steps. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "Not my woman carrying my child," Lucas said stubbornly. "I am allowed to worry," Kate kissed him. "You are allowed, but you also need to trust that I know my own body and will ask for help if I need it." "Fine. But I am still carrying you over icy patches." Their son was born in March during a late spring storm, as if the weather wanted to remind them of how they had met. Kate's labor was long and difficult, and Lucas paced the house wearing a path in the floorboards while Mrs. Patterson and the doctor attended to her. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he burst into the bedroom despite protests and found Kate exhausted but smiling, holding a small bundle. "Meet your son," she said, and Lucas approached on shaking legs. The baby was tiny and red and perfect. He had a shock of dark hair and was wailing with impressive volume. Lucas reached out with one finger and touched his son's hand, and the baby immediately gripped it with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered, overcome with emotion. "Kate, he is perfect." "We should name him," Kate said. "What about James, after your father?" Lucas felt tears sting his eyes. His father would have loved to meet this child, would have been so proud. "James Lucas Northwood, it is perfect." Over the next months, they adjusted to life as parents. Neither of them had any idea what they were doing, but they figured it out together. Lucas discovered he loved being a father, loved watching his son grow and change each day. Kate marveled at how gentle Lucas was with their baby, how this strong rancher became so tender with someone so small. "You are a natural," she told him one night, watching him rock James to sleep. "I had a good teacher. My father was patient and kind. I want to be the same for our son." As James grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Lucas's horses gained a reputation for being well-trained and reliable, and he had buyers coming from 3 counties over. Kate's sewing business expanded, and she employed 2 other women from town to help with commissions. They saved money, made improvements, and built a life that was richer than either had imagined. On a snowy evening in late November, 3 years after Kate had first arrived, they stood on their porch watching James play in the snow. He was 2.5 now, full of energy and curiosity, with his mother's storm-gray eyes and his father's stubborn determination. "You ever regret it?" Lucas asked, pulling Kate close. "Leaving your old life, choosing this one?" Kate looked up at him in surprise. "Never. Not for a single second. This life, this family, is everything I ever wanted but did not know how to ask for." She paused. "Do you regret taking in a stranger that snowy night?" Lucas kissed her forehead. "That snowy night changed everything. I was just existing before you arrived, going through the motions without really living. You reminded me what it means to hope, to love, to build something with another person. You gave me a family, Kate. You gave me a reason to want more than just survival." "We gave each other those things," Kate said, echoing his words from their wedding night. "That is what love means." They stood there watching their son play, wrapped in each other's arms as snow began to fall gently around them. In the distance, the cattle were settling for the night, and smoke rose from their chimney into the darkening sky. Inside the house, a fire crackled warmly and dinner was waiting. It was a simple life, a hard life sometimes, but it was theirs. Built on trust and partnership, and a love that had started with an unlikely meeting in a snowstorm and grown into something unshakable. "I am pregnant again," Kate said suddenly, and Lucas pulled back to look at her. "What? Are you certain?" She nodded, smiling. "I saw the doctor yesterday while you were in town. I am about 2 months along." Lucas let out a shout of joy that startled James, who looked over at his parents with wide eyes. Lucas scooped up his son and then pulled Kate close. the three of them standing together in the snow. "Another baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Our family is growing." "Is that all right?" Kate asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "It is more than all right, it is perfect." He kissed her, then kissed James's head. "Everything about this life is perfect." Their daughter was born in June, arriving quickly and easily compared to her brother. They named her Rose, after Kate's mother, and she had her father's dark hair and her mother's delicate features. James was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything from baths to bedtime stories. The years flowed by, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. They added another room to the house when Kate became pregnant for a third time, welcoming another son they named Thomas. The ranch continued to grow, and Lucas hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. Kate's sewing business became a legitimate dress shop in town, employing 5 women and serving customers from all over the county. Through it all, Lucas and Kate remained each other's anchor. They still made time to sit together on the porch in the evenings after the children were asleep, talking about their days and their dreams. They still looked at each other with the same wonder they had felt that first snowy night. They still chose each other, every single day. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Kate asked one evening, 15 years after they had met. They were in their early 40s now, with 3 grown children and a life full of love and purpose. "When you helped me out of that coach." "I asked if you would trust me," Lucas said, pulling her closer on the porch swing they had installed years ago. "And I did. Best decision I ever made." Kate rested her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if that storm had not hit. If the stage had made it to the next town, if someone else had found us. But it did, and I did, and you are here." Lucas kissed her hair. "Some things are just meant to be, Kate. We were meant to be. You think James and Rose will find what we have?" Their eldest was 20 now, working the ranch with Lucas and courting a girl from the neighboring spread. Rose was 17 and helping Kate run the dress shop, showing a head for business that impressed everyone. Thomas, at 13, was still deciding what he wanted from life. "If they are lucky," Lucas said, "but what we have is rare. It takes work and commitment and choosing each other even when it is hard." "It has never been hard to choose you," Kate said softly. "Not once in 15 years. Not even when I am stubborn and overprotective and set in my ways. Especially then. Those are the things that make you who you are. The man I fell in love with that snowy night when you offered me shelter and safety and a chance at a new life." Lucas tilted her face up and kissed her, slow and deep and full of 15 years of love and partnership. When they pulled apart, both smiling, Kate sighed contentedly. "The snowy night I arrived, you knew your lonely days were over," she said. "But I knew something too." "What?" "That my wandering was done. That I had finally found the home I had been searching for without knowing I was searching. That home was not a place but a person, and that person was you." Lucas held her close as the sun set over their land, over the ranch they had built together, over the life they had created from nothing but hope and love and determination. Their children's laughter drifted from inside the house, mixing with the sounds of evening settling over the Kansas prairie. It had been a long journey for both of them. Kate had run from a gilded cage toward an uncertain future. Lucas had been trapped in loneliness of his own making, convinced he was better off alone. But a snowstorm had brought them together, and they had chosen to build something beautiful from that chance meeting. Now, 15 years later, they had everything they had never known they wanted. A home full of love and laughter, children who were growing into good people, a business that provided for their family and helped their community, friends and neighbors who supported them, and most importantly, they had each other. "I love you, Kate Northwood," Lucas said, using the name she had carried for 15 years now. "More today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too, Lucas, always and forever." They sat together as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. The snowy night Kate arrived had indeed ended Lucas's lonely days, but it had also begun something much more important. It had begun a partnership, a family, a love story that would last for the rest of their lives and beyond. Inside the house, Rose called that dinner was ready, and they could hear James and Thomas arguing good-naturedly about something. Kate started to stand, but Lucas pulled her back for one more kiss. "Thank you," he said against her lips. "For what?" "For trusting me that snowy night. For staying. For choosing this life, choosing me every single day since then. For giving me everything I did not know I needed." "You gave me the same," Kate said. "We saved each other, Lucas. That is what love does." Hand in hand, they walked into their house, into the warmth and light and laughter of the family they had created together. Outside, snow began to fall gently, just as it had on that fateful night 15 years ago. But now there was nothing to fear from the storm. Now there was only warmth and love, and the certain knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged. The years continued to pass, bringing grandchildren and expanded businesses and more memories than they could count. Lucas's hair turned silver, and Kate's acquired threads of gray she refused to dye. They slowed down a bit, let their children take on more responsibility, but they never stopped choosing each other. On their 20th anniversary, Lucas surprised Kate with a trip to Denver, finally taking her to the city she had once planned to make her home. They stayed in a fine hotel and ate at fancy restaurants, and Kate loved every minute of it. But at the end of the week, she was ready to go home. "Denver is beautiful," she told Lucas as they packed to leave. "But it is not where I belong anymore. Home is wherever you are." They returned to Wilson, to their ranch and their family and the life they had built together. And on quiet evenings, they still sat on their porch watching the sun set, holding hands and counting their blessings. Lucas Northwood had been alone for 4 years before that snowy night. He had convinced himself he preferred it that way, that solitude was safer than risking his heart. But Katherine Lewis had arrived in his life during a winter storm and changed everything. She had reminded him what it meant to hope, to love, to live instead of just exist. And Kate had been running from a life that was slowly suffocating her, searching for freedom without knowing what that freedom should look like. But she had found it in the most unlikely place, with a quiet cowboy who offered her safety and respect, and eventually a love that transformed them both. The snowy night she arrived, the cowboy knew his lonely days were over. But neither of them knew just how beautiful the days ahead would be. Neither of them could have imagined the life they would build together, the family they would raise, the love that would sustain them through every challenge and celebrate every joy. It was a love story that began with a chance meeting in a snowstorm and grew into something legendary in Wilson, Kansas. People spoke of Lucas and Kate Northwood with admiration, pointing to them as an example of what real partnership looked like. Their children grew up secure in the knowledge of their parents' love, and their grandchildren heard stories of the snowy night that changed everything. And through it all, Lucas and Kate remained each other's greatest love, deepest friend, and strongest support. They proved that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. That true love is built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day. That a snowstorm can bring more than just cold and hardship. It can bring hope and change and the beginning of something beautiful. Years later, when they were old and gray and surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, someone asked Kate if she ever regretted her impulsive decision to run away from St. Louis all those years ago. "Regret," Kate laughed, reaching for Lucas's hand. "That decision brought me here, to him, to this life, to everything that matters. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner." Lucas squeezed her hand and smiled, that same smile that had made her heart skip all those years ago. "The snowy night you arrived was the luckiest night of my life." "Mine too," Kate said softly. "Mine too." And in the warmth of their home, surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had nurtured for decades, Lucas and Kate Northwood knew with absolute certainty that they had found exactly what they had been searching for. Not in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in the quiet daily choice to love each other, support each other, and build a life together one day at a time. The snowy night she arrived, the cowboy knew his lonely days were over. And the woman who had been running toward an uncertain future discovered that home was not a destination, but a person. Together, they created a love story for the ages, proving that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of kindness during a winter storm. Their story became part of Wilson's history, told and retold until it took on the quality of legend. But those who knew them best understood that the real magic was not in the dramatic beginning, but in the thousands of small moments that followed. The quiet mornings sharing coffee, the hard days working side by side, the evenings watching sunsets, the years of choosing each other, supporting each other, loving each other through everything life brought their way. That was the true story. Not a fairy tale with a single dramatic moment, but a real love built on partnership and respect and unwavering commitment. The kind of love that does not just survive but thrives, growing deeper and richer with each passing year. And when Lucas and Kate were very old, sitting on their porch in the twilight of their lives, they would look at each other and smile, knowing they had gotten it right. They had found what everyone searches for and so few truly find. They had found their person, their partner, their home. The snowy night she arrived changed everything. And every day after, they were grateful for that storm, for that chance meeting, for the courage to trust a stranger and the wisdom to recognize love when it appeared. Their lonely days were indeed over, replaced by a lifetime of companionship, purpose, and a love that would echo through generations. It was a good life, a full life, a life well lived together, and in the end, that was all that mattered. They had found each other, chosen each other, and built something beautiful together. The snowy night was just the beginning. Everything that came after, all the love and laughter and challenges and triumphs, that was the real story. And it was more wonderful than either of them could have imagined on that cold winter night when a cowboy opened a coach door and offered shelter to a woman running toward hope.